Israel is reeling from two of the most violent terror attacks in years that tragically ended with the murder of 7 people and 5 others injured. And when I say injured, I mean seriously injured. A Palestinian terrorist killed 7 people and wounded at least 3 others outside a synagogue in the Neve Yaakov neighborhood in Jerusalem. The next morning, a 13-year-old Palestinian, 13, shot and wounded 2 men, a father and his son, outside Jerusalem's Old City. According to the IDF, and this is crazy, the son was an off-duty paratrooper, and he actually managed to shoot and injure the attacker despite his own wounds. Like Israelis and many Jewish people across the globe, I'm in a lot of pain watching and hearing about this. Prior to all of this, tensions were high since January 26th, when IDF soldiers raided the Jenin refugee camp in the West Bank. The IDF entered Jenin to arrest people suspected of planning a terror attack on Israelis. 10 Palestinians were killed in the raid. Most of them were armed members of Hamas and Islamic Jihad, although at least one was a civilian. So how do we respond? Where do we go from here? In some ways, very oddly that it affected me and many others this way, there was one thing that felt even more painful than the terrorism and the loss of lives. It was how many Palestinians responded to these moments. According to Palestinian media, there were celebrations of the synagogue shooting in East Jerusalem, the West Bank, and Gaza. Videos of the celebrations showed fireworks, horns honking, and people cheering and handing out treats. In a statement following the attacks, Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas refused to condemn and didn't even mention the shootings. Instead, he said that he holds Israel fully responsible for the dangerous escalation in violence. It's important to say that not all Palestinians celebrated the attacks, and one Arab resident of East Jerusalem, Fadi Dakidak, had the opposite reaction. He was the first Magen David Adom paramedic to arrive at the scene of the synagogue shooting, and here's what he told Channel 12 News. Listen up.
אז אני בטוח שכולנו וגם הציבור מכיר את זה, מד"א, מגן דוד אדום. הוא מדינה מלפני עצמה בדו-קיום. כן. יהודים מצילים ערבים, ערבים מצילים יהודים. אני חושב שזה דוגמה לכל העולם.
For me, this sort of moment and hearing from Dakidak gives me hope. So how do we all respond to this? I'm not going to tell you what to think, but here's how I think about this, and let's rise above the noise with these 3 thoughts. Number 1, if you're a Jewish person, when there is a tragedy in our community, we've got to feel, we've got to cry out, we've got to care. I view this not as a cute thing or a nice thing, but such an important trait. To care, to feel, to empathize with your people. In Maimonides' magnum opus on Jewish law, the Mishnah Torah, he says that it's a trait of cruelty to not cry out when something terrible happens to the Jewish people. You could have issues with Israel. I have issues with Israel. You could protest the Israeli government. That's okay. You can like aspects of Israel's policy and dislike other aspects. It doesn't matter. Your political beliefs, my political beliefs, are not what defines our membership to the Jewish people, to Am Yisrael. What matters is that you care about the Jewish people, especially in a time of tragedy, that we feel for each other, that we view ourselves as an extended family. Even if you strongly disagree with, I don't know, the judicial reforms in Israel's government or the situation in the Palestinian territories, don't let that get in the way of caring for the Jewish people and crying out. Number 2, focus on how you respond. Listen, during painful moments like this, I often think of the Jewish concept of yifashvesh b'ma'asav, or examining our own actions. The basic idea is that we may not always have control over the events and tragedies that happen to us, but we can control our next steps. How we respond will look different for everyone. Some of us might pray more or study more, or I don't know, others might want to give more charity or maybe have more empathy for others. I'm not trying to be cliche here. I'm trying to say that we can't control what happens externally, but we can internalize what happens in the world and make internal changes. In fact, that's all we can do. Whatever our response looks like, the main idea is to make an intentional shift in the most difficult moments and focus on how we can help one another and be kinder to each other. And number 3, the celebrations that were happening in too many Palestinian communities are a reminder of how people should not respond to the tragedy of an enemy. It's no secret that the Palestinians and Israelis as a whole are not the best of friends for now. Hopefully that can change soon. Proverbs has a subtle but brilliant wisdom where it says, when your enemy falls and fails, don't rejoice. Israeli soldiers killed 10 Palestinians in Jenin. Even though 9 of them were members of a terrorist group, we should not have parties with fireworks and cheering and treats for the loss of life. And I didn't see that happening. And I'm happy to not see it, and I hope I never see it. And regardless of the difficulties and pain many Palestinians are feeling, and there's no doubt there is pain there, seeing so many of their reactions is just devastating. Proverbs has it right. It should pain us when we see our enemies hurt. Let's focus on how we respond and how we will look out for each other and never, ever celebrate the loss of innocent life.